Hi everybody, this is Janet Muchiri of NAID, Network of African Youths for Development, and I'm very happy to be joined by a group of young people working in development, different parts of Africa, to discuss about the challenges that Africa might face in the implementation of SDGs. Today, especially, we're going to be focusing on financing for development. Since, as you all know, the Financing for Development Conference is going on, or it's going to kick start in on Monday, and we're going to be focusing on development. Where is the money going to come from? The partnerships that we're going to, and the role of the young people. So of course there are challenges in there and opportunities that young people can take advantage of. So with me today, Joanne Bewa of Young Benin's Leaders Association, and I have Jamila of Helpage International, and then of course we have of Dandelion Kenya. And of course, we might have more people coming in to join us. So we all welcome you to the discussion today. Probably just before we start, I'll ask all the participants, starting from Jamila, to introduce themselves and just say where they work and something like that. So Jamila, if you can hear me.
Yes, thank you very much. Hi, everyone. My name is Jamila Monjisi. I am Head of Policy Advocacy and Campaigns at Helpage International, a regional office that is based in Nairobi, Kenya, and we cover East, West, and Central Africa. Also, our main interest in this conversation is that our key approach to advocacy in pushing the rights of older people is through intergenerational solidarity with the youth. We feel that jointly we can push for very specific principles within the implementation of the SDGs, including accountability and visibility of the most marginalized groups of people in our societies. Thank you, Catherine.
Okay. Joanne will go next.
So if we can have Joanne now.
Yes, sure. Hi, everyone. This is Joanne Bewa. So, as I was saying, my name will appear as Korean because I have some issue with my account. So, I'm based in Benin, currently based in Benin. I'm a health professional working as a medical doctor in a private clinic. And I'm the current executive director of the Young Beninese Leaders Association, a youth-led organization that is champion in promoting sexual reproductive health and rights. A lot of advocacy to our government and also a lot of community. So we push our work in our community. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
Okay, you're very much welcome.
Thank you very much. Okay, I think now I will introduce myself. Okay, I am Catherine Nyambura from Dandelion Kenya. We are based in Kenya. We work with young people, and why we are hosting this hangout today is because apart from just having FFD next week, financing for development, we will also, today is also the Global Day of Action for with the Action 2015 campaign, trying to call world leaders to finance our future. And this sits very well in terms of young people calling for money to be allocated to youth priorities. And so apart from just this being important for financing our future, it's financing our future within the context of the world is adopting the SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals. It's a really hefty agenda, very loaded, and it calls for so much money. Apparently, the estimation now runs into trillions of dollars. So it means this money has to come from somewhere, and it means the young people have to play a role, either in raising the money or in terms of contributing the money or benefiting from the money, depending on what part of the debate you'll be from. But I feel it's also important for us to consolidate voices. As world leaders come to meet next week, they should be able to understand what young people want and why they see this as an important process. So apart from just having the discussions with our panelists who are really able and have been following the processes, we'd also like to ask our audience who are watching to be able to send us questions on hashtag NAIDChat, YD chat and hashtag post 2015 dialogue, and you can use our you can use our personal organizational handles at Dandelion Kenya and Catherine Young one. I will share those on the chat box, and then we can have the conversation going. Feel free to ask questions. We already have a few questions going on, and we have a really hefty agenda. So we hope we will have a fruitful discussion as we go on. Thank you everyone for joining us, and we look forward to a fruitful 2 hours chat. Thank you.
Uh, all right, so I think now we can actually begin. So I see I see we have Stephen here. Anyway, we
Stephen
can
is one
go
of
on.
the,
Catherine.
yes, you can go on, thank you. So I think
Yeah.
the first question for our panelists, and Stephen can serve as a discussant, so you can add on to what the panelists will say, both Joanie and Jamila, and we can start with Joanie, then Jamila as we answer the questions. So, and please mute your microphone so we can go on smoothly. So we'd like to also note that it's a crucial, FFD, apart from just being crucial as a process, it's part of the entire post-2015 framework. We have 4 pillars, and it's very important in there. But I'd like to ask our panelists what their highlights have been so far in terms of the post-2015 process and how they see this fitting within the implementation.
If we could start with Jamila, please.
Hi, everyone again. I think for us, the journey has taken quite a long time. We started from the beginning when the initial discussion started in terms of trying to highlight certain issues that they were missed out in the Millennium Development Goals and what we would like to see moving forward through the SDG framework. So at least this time around, I think we feel very encouraged that issues of people of all ages have been prioritized. Aging, older people has been a big issue. And then now we have a very interesting or promising framework that will also look at how are we going to promise this commitment. So we have a huge number of goals. We have lots of targets. mm, and most of, I mean, all of them are really important, targeting very important segments of our communities. What is interesting is how are we going to see these commitments translate into actions at the national level. So for me, that's where the biggest challenge has been with the MDGs, and will always be at the national level. So people like us, different segments, the youth, older people, women, how do we then position ourselves to ensure that this time around no one is left behind? That slogan, I think we need to carry it forward for the next 15 years. Plus, the marginalized and the most marginalized groups of people, actually their voices and their aspirations and their faces are seen throughout all the plans. And then now, this coming week, our finance ministers will be meeting in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, to talk about financing, and this is our next hope, that we are hoping their bold commitments will actually target financing the priorities in our countries. In Africa as a continent, we have unique priorities, we have unique challenges, we have lessons from the MDGs and things that we want to push forward, and I would like to see this moving forward. So for me, the journey of influencing the process has been interesting, but now we are coming to the end of that. We need to look beyond, moving forward, and pushing the key messages.
Okay, Jamila, thank you. Joanie, are you there? Maybe you could join us. Hello, Joanie. Hello, is everybody there? Judy, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. So I mean,
Okay. What I'd like
if Joanny is not there, probably
well, Stephen can go on and join us and add his voice.
Can you hear me?
Oh, Joanny is here. Yes, we can hear you, Joanny. You're back.
Oh, okay. Okay, perfect. As Jamila said, we have kind of a lot of issues that at the same time all are a priority, like poverty, like health issues, like gender, like environment. So the question is that what are we going to prioritize? Of course, everything is a priority. How are we going to strategize, and plan how we will address the issues related to all of that topic? The second thing I can say is that we came from very far, starting from the first conference on financing for development to the second one on the financing for development, and now the third one. How far are we ready to go? How far are we able to go? And how far our government are committed to go? And I think that this is a kind of sensitive question
Okay.
that we have, push when we will be in front of them. But definitely, I think that all kind of let me say all kind of source of financing need to be explored. We know that we can find, domestic financing, we can find external financing, but as young people, how can we fit our agenda into the national agenda? How can we fit the
Okay.
agenda into our district level agenda? This is some concern that we'll address throughout the hangout. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Joanny. I like the fact that you bring out the sources that have been so far targeted as having to raise money for the SDGs. And we are seeing things like tax becoming a very interesting discussion, how we collect our taxes, what we use for, who we particularly tax, because we see our governments, we have seen tax havens, tax dodging, tax evasions has become something brought to light with the FFD. We have seen private financing, the private sector, which has been brought on board as one of the one of the sectors where we could harvest more money. Harvest is a really interesting word, but I will just use it anyway. We see issues of international finance, and we have seen so many points being floated, and now we have a number of things that have been fronted out there. But myself to ask is, we also have this push on the continent for young people to become entrepreneurs, for young people to raise money, to be able to stop thinking of themselves as employees but start becoming employers. So do you see this as an important fit, as it fitting within the FFD in terms of us raising money if we had more entrepreneurs as young people? And we have Zoe is joining us. Zoe, please introduce yourself. We are trying to discuss FFD and post 2015, what your highlights have been so far in the process, and how you think it's important for young people especially. Thank you and welcome.
Hi, hello everyone. Catherine, thanks very much for the invite. And I'm Zonziwo and accept greetings from the foot of Mount Cameroon.
Thank you. So maybe you could just go ahead and delve into the first question. What are your highlights in the post 2015 in the FFD? Where do young people fit in all this, in your opinion, as a young woman working on these issues on the African continent? Zonzi, that's your question.
Okay. Sorry, let me just. Catherine, I feel this is, a very important opportunity for our generation, and especially for young women. Issues and financing development issues, and I think this is a time for us to bring forth, women's priorities and women's issues, because
Okay, hello, Zo, are you still there? I think we're having a little bit of an issue. Stephen, are you there? Can you hear us as we wait for Zoe to come back? Stephen? Okay, is everybody there? If you can hear me, just say hello. Hello.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. I think as we wait for Zoe to come back, maybe we could go ahead. Stephen, are you there? You can add your voice, or do we move on? I don't think he can hear us. So I think the next thing I'd like to hear from the other panelists, Joanie and Jamila, is apart from money, what else will enable Africa implement the SDGs, and particularly the post 2015? And as we answer this question, I want us to think of the comprehensiveness within which the post 2015 comes. There is a political declaration. We have the SDGs, the goals, targets, and indicators. We have the FFD now, which speaks about money, but also we have other means of implementation, which is where I want you to answer. And then we have the follow-up and review. But for us to implement this, we have to take the entire agenda as a whole. So what do you think we will have to, apart from just thinking of money, what else do we have to put in our minds as we implement this agenda? Jamila, you can go first.
I think for me, yes, money is not everything. In particular, from our experience of MDGs, we know that. For me, I think our biggest priority is the political commitment and willingness of our leaders. So looking at that political commitment, it means that we will translate these ambitious plans into actionable plans at the national level, the local level, the community level. Therefore, when that comes in, the resources, the financing will definitely come in. So for me, that's a non-negotiable issue that we really, as civil society, as activists, we need to push for that. We need that our leaders to actually believe in the SDGs as a framework to take us from out of poverty to a different level. And then the second bit, I think, for me, which is lacking in most of African countries, is the structural arrangement. But here I'm talking about the coordination of different sectors, coordination of different actors, which is related to the political commitment, I think. You find when you talk about youth, for example, issues around youth are scattered in different departments, different ministries. When you talk about water and sanitation, you talk about environment, is the same thing. And we know that that becomes a huge bottleneck for us to implement anything that will be sustainable in the sense, because you know the Ministry of Climate Change or Ministry of Environment will have their own plans and did not talk to the Ministry of Labor or the Ministry of Youth or other Ministry of Planning, so they don't talk to each other. I think that coordination relates to the political commitment and what we are asking for. I think we should have one coordinating unit that brings the sustainable development agenda forward in any country, at the national level, the regional level, at the global level. Probably we have, but that for me is something that we need to really push. And thirdly is the role of the civil society in this, in everywhere that we do. I think for me, civil society play a critical role, particularly in Africa, not only as you know, supporting the government plans in providing services, but the role that we play in advocacy, the role we play in you know, bringing in the rights holders, the youth, the women, the older people into the conversation, so that actually the leaders can hear what the target group want, is critical. And now my concern is that as we move forward, we see a lot of countries or governments in Africa trying to restrict the freedom of civil society to engage, to bring in issues, to participate in those dialogues. For me, that's a huge concern. This agenda will not move forward if a civil society continue to be marginalized, will not be given a space to engage as an important player. So for me, I'll stop there for now, and maybe Joanne can add. But for me, those are principles that they need to be put in place. apart in addition to the financing.
Thank you very much, Jamila. Johnny, you could add your voice.
Okay, I totally agree with Jamila. Normally our civil society organizations should be, not only involved in national plan, national health plan, national policy development plan, but also in national financing framework. And there is a real lack or a commitment in that kind of place of decision making. So definitely, I think that it's something that we need to make advocacy on. So because if we are just there to be involved in the execution, yes, that's okay. In the monitoring, okay, that's okay. But what about planning? What about agreeing together on how to finance it? I think Jamila was totally
Okay.
right. Yeah.
Thank you very much. I also think something else, just to add our voice, as Jamila puts it, we have shrinking space across the globe for civil society, particularly on the global south. In Kenya, we've seen the PBO Act, and it's across the country. But I also want to emphasize we have to adopt CSOs in all their forms. We have youth organizations who do quite good work. And if it were not for us, Dandelion Kenya and NAID hosting this chat, we would not be having this space. So I think as we think of civil society, let us think of them in a much more broader sense. And also the political will. Thank you, Jamila, for pointing that out. We have an entire section of the post-2015, the political declaration, that is meant to ensure we generate and galvanize global political will for investing in the world's sustainable development. So thank you so much, Jamila, and for bringing those points. But nextly to ask, I have had Joanie pointing out that we need national mechanisms. But as we speak of national mechanisms, we all have different capacities in our countries. When you speak of Kenya, when you speak of Benin, when you speak of UK, different countries across the world have different capacities. But we have the same agenda we are going to adopt. So it means we need to capacity build. How do you see this coming up in terms of us implementing this agenda? How do we build the capacity? Whose capacity do we build? And how do we do this if we are to ensure the implementation is well coordinated, as Jamila puts it, and there is cohesion? So we don't have a little pockets of everything being done across countries, and eventually the reporting is not comprehensive or does not capture everything. Maybe we can speak on capacity building much more comprehensively. Somebody touch on that and we can hear what you have to say. Jamila, you could go first on this one.
Okay, yes, capacity building really is important, particularly again, us in this continent. And I think this capacity building, it's in totality involves the citizens. I think for me, I would underscore the importance of citizen voices. And here I agree with you, Catherine. Citizens means everybody. I think we need to build the capacity of children, youth, women, older people, all different segments of society. They need to be able to articulate their aspirations, their issues more effectively. So capacity building for me, number one, comes to citizens. Then one, we need to understand what our rights are, what the SDG framework is all about, and why should I care as a citizen. So all that means raising awareness, simplifying those goals and targets, and making sure that everybody, every segment of the society is aware and why is it important. Then the second component of capacity building comes with the different implementers. For me, I think the implementers are supposed to be planning and providing those services. Most of them, honestly speaking, most of them really do not understand certain issues. Maybe they're there because of political connections they have, or because they're connected to who and who in that country. And the ones that really understand these issues are probably they've migrated or working for the UN system where they have better pay. So it's also about having the right capacity for people who are planning, people who can understand these issues and able to implement. So these are the different government ministries, different government departments, so that we must have a capacity building agenda in Africa that will ensure that we retain good people who can well paid, so that they can actually do a development program that um, kind of addresses all these issues. And then lastly, I think for me, the donors or the development partners for the case of Africa, those two, we need to have some very serious conversations in the sense what priorities, what agenda are they pushing in our countries. So that kind of also, it's also about discussing and saying, okay, wherever you invest, it has to be issues that the citizens themselves do want. Plus, also then secondly will be the government. Let me stop there.
Okay, Joanny, you could go next. Thank you so much for the comprehensive analysis, Jamila. Joanny, you could add your voice.
Maybe just a very quick thing to say. I think that is capacity building is also key. But one thing that is also interesting is that we will be able to adapt, all of that scientific documents, scientific statistics, scientific evidence to make it simple to understand and easy to understand by the citizen, by
Okay.
the CSO, and all of the young people who, you know, are very intelligent, very determined to understand, but we can make that road very easy for them too. And the second point is capacity is really not related to the one who are representing us. I know that all of them are well equipped, are well qualified, they have very high profile of expert, but it's always interesting when you keep being training on some new issues, since we know that the world is always moving forward. So there are new concepts, new issues that we need to deal with. So if our government, the experts who are representing us at the UN and that various agencies can also be updated and trained, I think that it will make our work easy. That's all.
Okay, thank you. I think we are having really some nice discussions coming out of this, and I like the fact that you speak of retention of gaps in development. Important for development for most of us, so it's very good. And Jamila, I like the fact that you speak of retention of brains in Africa, because we lose so many people because of brain drain, and that means we lose capacity and we have to continuously train people because of these gaps. But something else we have not talked about, and I want us to also focus on it, is data. For Joanny, who's a young person, we have in most of our countries in Africa, we have the section of 10 to 14-year-olds who are almost invisible to policymakers because we don't have data on them. For Jamila, who speaks of people who are older, above 49-year-olds, we don't have data on such people. And then for the data we have, when we do reporting, it's normally very lumped together. So you will see us reporting for grouping 15 to 49-year-olds as women of reproductive age. We have not looked at issue of segregation, for example, into age brackets that speak to specific age needs. We have not embraced data in a much more, what will I say, revolutionary way. And we have this, during the post-2015 discussion, we have seen data come out as one of the most critical, important things needed for us to implement the agenda. So I want to hear the perspectives of Joanny as a young person and adolescents, working with adolescents. What do you think of how we need to work with data for it to work for implementation? And also, Jamila, how do we need to make data work for us and for us to bring these gaps, intergenerational gaps, for us to seal these loopholes? Joanny, you could start on this one. Joanny, are you there? Jamila, maybe you could go then.
Okay, data is a critical issue, and again, is one of the issues we have been pushing with negotiations throughout the negotiations of SDGs. Because we know, why is it important? We know that people, if you're not counted, that means you do not exist. If you don't exist, no one will plan for you, no one will talk on your behalf or actually involve you. So for us, um, the invisibility of certain segments of our society, yes, most of the data, for example, women, when you talk about women infected with HIV/AIDS, the data cuts off at 49. Does it mean that after 49 people, I mean, at age of 50 do not exist? That's absolutely not true. There are a lot of people unaccounted for. That means this is also why our plans and programs really fail to address the real issues because we don't know who they are. So moving forward, I think SDGs, we have been really calling for data revolution, that every country should be able to have statistics of how many children, how many women, how many youth of different ages, so that this informs planning and this informs priorities at certain levels. So every county, for example, in Kenya, or every district or village should have specific statistics for everyone, so that they're able to plan and address certain issues. Unfortunately, yes, some, I think in most of our countries, some data is collected, but is scattered everywhere. It's not even usable. For example, us as HelpAge, we try to bring in what an annual report that is called Global Age Watch Index, from globally. Unfortunately, very few countries are in that index in Africa. I think this year it's on. Last year it was only 11 countries in Africa who came into the index, because those are the countries that have data. Most of them, the rest of the out of the 54 countries in Africa, they didn't have reliable data or easily accessible data. And for us, it's a big concern. That means we are underrepresenting different things. We are planning based on our thinking or at the desks rather than actually on realities. And then also, I totally believe even most of the youth programs are not doing very well, or they're still in pilot phases. It's just because we do not know where they are, who they are, what are they doing, what do they want, and how can they be supported. So data is a critical issue, implementing SDGs moving forward.
Thanks, Jamila. So, Joanna, are you there? Probably we
Yes,
can
I'm
hear
there.
you. Okay, what do you think about data?
Oh, first of all, I think that the point that Catherine raised is, is totally right. Young girls and adolescents from 10 to 14 are also sexually active. If I can like take the example of, sexuality, they are also active. So how can we address sexuality education if we don't have the data regarding to the one that will be our first target? So it's complicated, and I think that first of all we need to invest in data collection first. We need to invest in data collection. We need to build capacities of the experts of the demographer who are going to collect data in our country, and we need to pay a particular attention to see how we can have data on time, because what we realize is that in most of our country, when we are in 2015, we have the data of 2014 in the best case. Sometimes we use the data of 2013. So there is a gap. We can't plan today for something that happened like 2 years ago or a year ago. So I think this is a huge challenge that we need to address. So data is key. As a scientist, we need to have proof if you want to plan. If you want to monitor ourselves, we can't monitor ourselves today in something that happened like 100 years ago. That's all. Thank
Okay,
you.
thanks very much. All right, thanks very much, Joanne. What challenges can people like yourselves and other groups trying to implement the SDGs at the community? What challenges can they expect? Apart from money, or what challenges have they already experienced? Especially I'd like you guys, personal experiences with the organization.
Okay, I think there are many challenges apart from money. One, I need to be a bit critical on us as civil society, as activists of different, advocating for different issues. I think we don't also talk to each other. We do criticize our government, of poor coordination. I experience quite a lot of that as well. Among ourselves, that we don't talk to each other, we do not plan together, and as a result, there's a lot of double, reinventing the wheel, doing the same things over and over again, not learning from each other, and also a lot of wastage of very minimal resources that we have. I think for me, looking at all these 17 goals, they're all very critical. I think, as Joanne said, they're all very important, and we cannot we don't have enough resources. So how do we join hands? How do we build on each other's strengths and learn from each other and do things to address people of all ages in our society? I think all issues are critical. We need to work together. So for me, that would be number one challenge. And then number two would be to, I think, the domestication of the SDGs at the national level and at the local community level. That for me would be a big challenge. If you're getting an experience from the MDGs, I think in certain countries, it took a long time to kind of bring them down to the national level. What is, and then harmonizing all these different uh, development plans or sustainable development agendas in our countries. For me, that we need to have one framework in each country. We should not have SDGs or a different framework operating differently. In Africa, we have Agenda 2063, kind of maybe may or may not be speaking to the SDG framework. And then in most countries, for example, in Kenya, we have Vision 2030, we have the other medium plans and long-term plans. And if all these development frameworks do not speak to each other, or we do not have one reporting mechanism, then we are going to be either double counting, wastage of resources and human, both financial and human resources. Plus also we may be, some of the key targets or key people will be left out again, as we did with MDGs. So I think for me, we need one single coordinating unit, maybe one reporting framework that can speak to all these different frameworks that we have at local, national, and regional level. That is, I see, as a challenge, and if we are not prepared properly, then we'll be in a bit of a mess. And I think, just speak broadly now, outside the development sector, I think we cannot implement this agenda without peace and security. But I'm speaking now in our region, Eastern Africa, or Africa in particular. If we are constantly in conflicts, if we are constantly issues arise here and then, we are unable to, this SDG framework, come 2030, we will not have anything to show if without peace and stability in this continent. And I think for me, speaking to the young people of Africa, they are the drivers of these SDGs. They are the drivers of the Agenda 2063 of Africa. So how do we take responsibility as young people of the continent to say, we will not be used to disrupt the continent, rather we will be used to push the sustainable development agenda in the continent. I think that ownership needs to happen at some point, and then we stop all this people. You look what's happening in Burundi. I think majority of people creating this crisis are young people, and we know most of them are being used maybe by the politicians or anything, and without care, if we don't take care, that country will be really in a huge mess very soon, really. So I'm calling upon, all of us young people to take leadership in terms of making sure that we have peace and stability, and we are able to implement this sustainable agenda together.
Thanks very much, Jamila. Actually, it's very important that you mention peace and security, because that is one thing that is to affect how well and to what level that we actually implement the SDGs. I mean, because if there's no peace, then definitely there's no good environment for implementing these development goals. And it's also interesting that you mentioned, CSOs working together and partnering. NAID has always has hosted different, hangouts, and both here and in different forums, and that has always been an issue. That like CSOs, it's like, well, they have a similar agenda. I mean, they're working towards the same thing, but they don't actually come together and cooperate, or so how do you think that we can encourage most young people working in different organizations, to form partnerships, to work together, and not only in the country, like example in Kenya, within a specific country, but also in the region? What do you think we need to do as people working with young people to build more partnerships, Jamila?
Yeah, I think I've seen quite a lot of positive development towards achieving that. For example, as HelpAge International, we have an MOU with Organization of African Youth. They are Pan-African institution, and we come together because we want the intergenerational solidarity, but we have certain principles that we are pushing. Maybe also to take back to your previous question is, and one of the other issues is about accountability. I think in Africa is a big issue. So for us, we are joining hands with the youth to make sure that our governments are accountable. First of all, we need to be accountable to ourselves, and then our governments are accountable to us. So I think those the set principles of accountability partnerships is the one that we push together, and I think that is a good example. We've done a few dialogues together with Organization of African Youth, and they've gone very well, and we want to scale up this partnership in different parts of the continent. And I think if we take that as an example, we can forge those partnerships together and find mutual agenda, and or something that we will push together jointly. Of course, there's very clear space for youth in different areas where the issues that they want to push. There's very clear space for the older people and the issues that we are pushing through that space. And then there's joint spaces. The joint spaces is really important because then we are able to come very strongly. And yesterday, as an example, we worked with a lot of other organizations, and we met in Kenya. We met with the Minister of Finance, so just before the delegation leaves for Ethiopia. And this was organized or coordinated by one member of this partnership. And it's not like it's not a huge structural partnership. It's just a few of us say, we are all pushing for the same things within Action 2015. Why don't we start talking to each other? And it was as easy as that. I think for me needs to be done. There will be the formal structures like the MOU of sharing or doing things together, but the informal one, it just needs someone to take lead and create those spaces where people can share information and say, okay, whatever you're doing is really important for me. Can I join in? And we found that was very, very easy. GCAP Kenya, I think, is really pushing for that also. They have certain expertise that we need. We have certain expertise that they need. Can we just start talking to each other? I think for me, you don't require resources for that. You don't
Thanks very much, Jamila. Uh, Very, very important suggestions there. And actually, I'm very happy to hear that, people are taking initiative, like the example you just gave us in Kenya. So, to take you back to the Finance for Development, meeting that is going to happen, or rather that is just underway next week. Jamila, if you could, I'm very interested in knowing how, or rather, at the beginning, Catherine mentioned that we'll have domestic funding, probably we'll have foreign aid, we'll have private companies, private funding. Uh, what does finance look like? Is it going to just uh, create another scenario whereby most of the African countries are actually depending on aid, or are we going to see more of domestic funding? And do you think we're also going to see more of the private enterprise? What do you think? Uh, Jamila, can you hear me? Okay, so I think I'll just repeat that. Since you feel like you're gone offline. But anyway, I'm asking, with the finance for development meeting going on next week, do you think that this particular meeting is going to, have positive results for Africa, or are we just going to see another example of, many African countries depending on foreign aid, or are we going to see more domestic funding directed towards, projectation? And also, do you think that we are going to have more private enterprise coming through, to partner in the process of implementation? Zamila, what do you? Hello, Zamila. Zamila, are you there?
Yes, sorry, my internet went off. I'm back now.
Okay. So, I was asking you just before you went offline. I don't know if you had my question before, but
Mm.
I was asking you, what do you think is going to come out of the financing for development meeting next week? Are we going to see more domestic funding, or are we going to see more private enterprise funding, or is the post 2015 development agenda just going to see more dependence on foreign aid? What do you think?
I think I don't expect major changes. I think in terms of looking at our continent, one, I don't think um, most of our representatives there went are prepared, to push, because most of them, they were just struggling last minute to go there. So for me, that's the principle. It's a fundamental problem. We do not do our proper homework and prepare for those kind of negotiations at the global level. So for me, I don't expect massive changes, but at the minimum, what I will expect is increased commitment in terms of increasing local financing from Africa. I think for me that's one thing I'm expecting our leaders not to disappoint us. And from the global leaders, I'm expecting at least a clear commitment that they're going to fund the Sustainable Development Agenda as per country priorities or per regional priorities rather than anything else. So for me, that's my hope, that's the expectation in terms of what the leaders will come back and say. This is a commitment. We are all committed as a global leaders to ensure that none of the targets or goals or plans related to SDGs will lack financing. That is the minimum standard we're expecting. And hoping with all our voices, the civil society, and I know there are a lot of other national and international civil society already in Addis are pushing, discussing, and maybe create enough pressure so that we get that commitment.
Okay, thanks very much, Jamila. It looks like we have Chair joining us. Chair, if you can hear me, welcome to the talk. Uh, you know, Probably if you could, you can tell us what kind of challenges that are expected towards the implementation of SDGs, especially post 2015. Chair, can you hear me? Okay, so if you really can't hear me, Okay, just let me know when you can hear me, and then I'll let you give your views. So, our final question before we take questions from our viewers and our audience, Jamila, if you could, what kind of opportunities do we anticipate? What kind of opportunities are there for Africa, and especially okay, we have Theo. Theo, welcome. Hello, Theo. Hello.
Hello,
Yes, if you
good
could,
morning.
what kind of child? Yes, how are you?
Are you getting me?
Hello.
I'm fine.
Yeah, we can hear you. Okay.
So,
Um, yeah. Yes.
really, my network here is bad, but at least I can try to contribute. I
Mm-hmm.
think we should really encourage, as the other person has said, we should encourage all the CSOs to work together at the level of countries, regions, and in short, at every level. And for us to do this, I really think we really need some encouragement from the government, because here in Cameroon, at times when you call the CSOs themselves, they will have their different excuses. If the government can also implement it or make it like a rule that they work together, I think will really help in development. And then secondly, we need to create a forum where the CSOs can go down, or in short, all the stakeholders can go down to the remote areas where they'll meet those who have no voice, those who come on air, who can't have access to the internet, who don't have access to the radio, so that we can get their own contributions and try to involve them in the SDGs. If not, then I think we might end up doing the same thing like the MDGs, because it seems most of the work was done on paper, most was done on internet, and nothing actually reached the people down there. So I think that's what I can
All right.
contribute for now.
Okay. Thanks very much. You're from Cameroon. And actually, you make a very good point that we need to try and reach those people who are actually not connected through probably through social media, and probably not part of the national CSOs or something. I think people working at the grassroots, it's important to actually try and reach them. So now, we'll go on and answer some of the questions that we have from the people. Camille asks, how is one to navigate through clearly dominated African national cultures in driving young women-related agenda issues that are important in the formulation of the SDGs? Probably, Jamila, you can answer this.
Yes, I think in Africa we tend to hide behind the culture or practice, saying, just to deny other people basic human rights. I think for me, it's one, young people play a critical role to challenge that culture and belief, and with evidence. I think what showing what works and what doesn't work. And for example, again, bringing into the experience of the work that I do in certain parts of Kenya, Tanzania, and maybe western parts of West Africa, a lot of women are killed based on witchcraft allegations, and then the people the main perpetrators are usually family members, and they get young people as the people to actually do the killing. So that's one of the cultural practices going around very widely. I think for me, as young people are the ones who are actually doing the abuse and violence against older women or women in general. It's critical that young men and women take responsibility to say we will not be used to perpetuate this kind of thinking in the society. I think once we have youth, and who are the majority in most of our countries, taking a stand to say we will not be used, um, plus we will not allow this to happen to our mothers, to our sisters, to our young people, different segments, or even to our children in our society, and take leadership in protecting. We as young people have a very strong voice, and together are very strong. I don't think there'll be any politician or anyone will can challenge that power. So once we start saying no, this is wrong, we will not be used to perpetuate this or to get this thing going in our society. Rather, we will take a responsibility of protecting um, protecting women and girls of our societies. Everything will change. I think the dynamics of our culture will change, because then who will be used to do those kind of harmful practices? Even if you take FGM as an example, um, older women will say we are doing that, we are cutting our girls because the young men will not marry them. If we show an example that actually FGM is harmful, so I would rather marry a girl who is not who's not gone through FGM, then these women will stop, or whatever the elders in our society will stop, because we are taking a stand against something. I don't think there's anybody else who will come to protect our women and girls more than the youth of Africa. And of course, the second component, yes, we do have very strong legal instruments, laws and policies, both at the continental level or at the national level. We have very strong laws to protect women and girls. But the main problem is no one cares about them. Either they don't know they exist, even if they know they exist, really they are not there to protect. So again, how us as young people create partnerships with the legal minds, among them also there are quite a number of young people, to use the existing laws and legal instruments to protect women and girls of this continent. I think, and support them through their education, through their leadership aspirations. That's the only way we can change the dynamics of women and girls of this continent. I'll stop there.
All right. Thanks very much. Chair, do you have any views on that?
Yeah, another thing we can also do is going down to the field and educating the women themselves and the young girls so that they know their rights. When they are aware of what is good and what is not good, I think they themselves can also stand and say, no, this one is good, this one is not good, so I will not accept what is not good for me. And we need also to really make these laws felt known to the people. Let them know the laws that are in place concerning everything that is going on, so that they don't act out of ignorance, without which I think many are acting out of ignorance. They don't even know what is happening. They just act because they inherited it from their grandparents. They are not even aware that there are laws binding some of those things. And since nobody goes down to see what is happening, because at times our laws are made and written on paper, but nobody is there to implement them. So if these laws are not made known, and if no strict measures are taken, if you to implement this law, I think the same thing will keep on happening over and over again. So let there be teams that go down to find out whether the laws are implemented, and if not, let the defaulters be brought to justice. If they start doing it, I'm sure people will become conscious and they know that the laws are against some of those customs that are bad, and they will surely abandon them. I end there for now.
All right. Thanks very much. So both of you make very good remarks about that. We actually have to, make sure that it's, we as we implement development, it's also very comprehensive, and it doesn't, uh, it's not at the expense of some people, like maybe women and their issues, or maybe young people. We also have another question that is related to that, and this one also comes from Mil, and he asks, national politics are often looked upon with a deeply rooted suspicion by the youth in Africa and elsewhere. How can African youth be mobilized to put themselves on the national political development agenda so that their voices are heard? I think what he actually wants now, that I remember Jamila mentioned that uh, often young people are used by maybe politicians to advance their own causes or their own agenda. But how can we that young people are used, not used? How can we make sure that young people take part in active political development? How do they involve themselves in politics constructively, and how do they actually make voices heard? How can we make sure that whenever we mention politics and the youth in Africa, and especially in my country, Kenya, often there chaos, we say the young people are being used or something, but how can we make it a positive a positive way that we can actually make it easier for development to be implemented? So, Jamila, do you want to go first?
Yes, I think that that's very important. We see a changing trends, I think, particularly in East Africa, that I'm very familiar with. Very young people taking up, joining politics and actually aspiring to take up leadership positions. We see in Kenya, we see in Tanzania, one of the, the final, the ruling party candidate is a very young man. So I see I see some hope coming up, but I think the biggest issue, there are two key issues. First of all, the young people themselves, how we need to be prepared to take those leadership positions, to get involved in those politics, and the only way to do that is we need to learn, read, learn from the elders, read a lot, and educate ourselves. Uh, and be able to educate ourselves both in terms of the leadership skills, but also in terms of the issues that we want to champion. I think for me that is critical, that we need to empower ourselves with different knowledge and skills to be able to to be seen, to develop ourselves as leaders. Of this continent, so that we don't just focus on one issue, one aspect of our lives, which is maybe income, getting income security, but we need to aspire to become leaders, and that the only way we can do that is by empowering ourselves, building our own capacity, and learning from others. There are a lot of very great leaders in Africa that we can learn from. And then secondly, then, as young people, I still insist that we have a huge constituency. How then we learn to support each other? If we this of this continent, if all young people we say this time around we will vote for either a member of parliament or a president, of this kind of this caliber, and a young person, I do not think anybody will challenge that. The only reason that we don't see the power of young people is because we are divided. We end up being used rather than actually supporting our own agenda. So for me, I think is, if we have an empowered um, young person with potential to be a good leader, then why don't we all gang up behind that person, a man or a woman, and vote for? So for me, is taking active and responsible participation in the governance of our countries or different institutions is important. And being responsible, meaning that you vote or you support the person you believe will bring change that you want to see, not only the person who gives you 100 shillings or gives you something which is very short term. So for me, we need to step back, take our own responsibilities, and use our rights more effectively. There will be no one to challenge that power.
Well said, Jamila. I actually can't add to that. But I would like to ask Chair for his views.
Yes, to me, if we can get a way of bringing the youth together so that from there we can be able to educate these youth. When we have a united team, when the youth are united, I'm sure and certain we can pass correct and right that's correct information to them on how development can be carried. From there, we can make them see the negative effects of the past action of youths who might be collided with some connive with some political leaders to do one act or another, which could not really produce good results to the general public and which could not bring development. For example, like in my country, Cameroon, the youth are just scattered, and each time you even talk of youth and development, first they'll be thinking, but there is no employment, there is no this, what are we going to do there? But we can convince them to know that development is in the hands of the youth and they can do great things. I am sure and certain that these youths will be able to stand on positive decisions and make change felt in the society. And the only way we can do it is bringing all the youth movement organizations, CSOs that involve youth together and having programs that educate the youth on what they can do and how they can do it to bring a positive change in the society. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Jamila Chair. So this is the last question for today. I mean, we're just about to embark on a very important journey for Africa and also for the world. In terms of the post 2015 development agenda. So I would like to ask you, uh, what does success look like to you? I mean, maybe for the next 15 years or the next 10 years or the next 20 years, what does success in terms of development in Africa look like to you? Jamil can go first.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, go ahead. Yes, Jamila.
Hello.
Okay, Chair, you can go first. What does success in terms of development in Africa look like
Hello.
to you?
Can you hear me now?
Yes? Yeah,
Okay.
I can. Please go
Okay.
ahead.
Yeah, I think in the short term, the success will mean um, that everybody is the most marginalized. I think is targeting the most marginalized groups, which would be children, women, older people. That we have secured such certain basic rights for the most marginalized groups in our society, so that we would have a healthcare system that addresses the needs of the children, of women, pregnant mothers, or older people. We have a social security system, whether it's a pension or something that will support the most marginalized, the people who were left behind in the last 15 years to out of poverty. I think for me, those are key. In Africa, unfortunately, those are the majority. So bringing issues of equity is in the immediate term, finding out because most of the studies we have seen, we know that maybe people with disabilities, for example, children with disabilities, find it very difficult more than other children, for example. So those are the most marginalized groups of the society that we need to target. And in the long term, I think these SDGs, when we come to have basic principles that we will no longer be struggling with food security for everyone. I think everyone has the right to have the right kind of food. I think for me in Africa, that is a shame. We are still, most of our people in this continent go out without maybe just one meal a day. I think that for me is something that we need to, our leaders should commit to eradicating, which is related to poverty. So when people are able to have 3 square meals or the food they can afford, And then the other success is about, we spoke a little bit earlier, is about women and girls. I think that component, not any of the sustainable development programs will not succeed if we leave out the other half of the population. So if we have very strong programs that are supported and funded to support women and girls with education and making sure that they have enough income to come out of poverty. I think that for me is important, is a immediate term success. And then long term, I think after 15 years, we shouldn't be struggling with poverty issues anymore. We shouldn't be struggling with maternal and child mortality rates being very high. Those are the basic things, and we know the other part of the world, they have overcome them, they've succeeded. So there are lots of lessons we can learn. It takes a political commitment to eradicate poverty and increase the other services. I'll end
All
there.
right. Thanks very much. Okay. Yeah. Thanks very much. Cheo.
Yes, just as Jamila has said, the marginalized must must be considered in the SDGs. If not, we can't be talking of success. Involved, we need to think of their health. We need to think of education. We need to think of creating and making them active in by putting awareness on methods they themselves can handle their situation, not just coming to give them, but there are ways we can do in rural areas, let's say in Cameroon, that can increase, let's say, yield for farmers and poverty. And if everybody there uses these modern methods of farming, as most rural areas here are farmers, I am sure we'll not be talking again of inequality, because the women will be able to do something for themselves and the men themselves will be able to do something, and the problem of inequality will be out of question. The problem of health will be out of question, and even education, because the two will be able, parents will be, father and mother will be able to raise money to a level that they can send their children to school. And then on the side of health also, we need also to educate mostly the women or married people, because there are situations in part of our country here that you find people with 8 children, 9, 10, but they don't have even enough food that they can give to their children. And when you talk to some of them, they will tell you children are a gift from God. So they need that education to know that, okay, following our means, we should have 2, 3, 4 children that we can take care of and create a family that will be happy and living on the resources we have. Thank you for now.
All right. Thanks very much, Cheo and Jamila. So it looks like all the other people actually went offline. But just to conclude, I would kindly ask you to give your last remarks, beginning with Jamila and then Cheo. Jamila.
Yeah, last remarks for me would be, one is just to appreciate this conversation. I think it's been very useful, and I would encourage that we do more of this, just to empower. This is one part of empowering ourselves, talking to each other and learning other experiences. So thank you very much for organizing that. And secondly, I think I would also emphasize on a point I spoke earlier about partnerships. I think we cannot achieve anything working in silos or working in isolation and or focusing on one item, because SDGs is a very comprehensive agenda. It's very ambitious plan, and no one organization or one actor would succeed. So I would encourage, in terms of how we need to strengthen these partnerships, when we talk about youth, how can we see where you include girls, women and girls? When we talk about older people, how can we also, because none of us live in isolation. Older people take care of young children, for example. They are also, they can be role models for youth as well. Youth can help amplify the voices of women and girls, can help amplify the voices of older people. So these partnerships need to be strengthened. And we work together to address the SDGs, because without that, our governments will continue doing business as usual, and come 2030, we will still be talking about failures. Thank you very much.
Or Chair.
Yes, to me, I will say I'm glad, I'm happy for such an encounter, because it helps us to learn from one another. Then I would like to say, for us, the civil society organizations working, we should be able to make sure we reach out to all the people in our localities. Because if we don't reach out to everybody, then we can't be talking of success. So we need to try and see how we can reach out to all the people, especially those who are out of connection, those in rural areas, those where in areas where there are no roads. Because in my country there are areas that where there are no roads, that people hardly go there, or they go there once in a week. So we need to reach to those people and get their own point of view. We need to reach to them and sensitize them on certain situations. We need to reach to them and talk to them, let them be aware of what is happening in the world, so that together we can work as one team, one family, and it will bring us a great success.
All right. Thank you very much to both of you and to all the other guests and speakers that we had today. Very insightful discussion, very empowering. I mean, I actually feel very empowered already. So we would like to appreciate all the people who came through, beginning with Catherine of Dandelion, Kenya, and then we had Joanne from Benin, and then we had Zoe who came in briefly. I think she's from Cameroon too. And then we had Jamila from Kenya and Cheo from Cameroon. We're very grateful for your insights, and we hope that we'll keep working together, both online and offline. We're also very grateful for our social media team led by Stephen Machua of Kenya, who'd been taking care of our social media input throughout the chat. We're also very grateful for Paul, who set up this whole thing, Paul of NAID. Yeah, so the discussion has gone on well, and we hope that we don't just discuss things, but we go out there and actually do put these things into action. So just to conclude, the post 2015 development agenda is actually very exciting for those of us working in the ESOs and other different capacities. So actually, as our participants have said, success looks very bright. Poverty-free Africa, human rights for the marginalized people, healthcare, social security, equity, and also security, among others. So, but this for us to move from here to there within a certain period of time, say 15 years from today, we need build partnerships with other CSOs in both at the local and at the national and at the global level. CSOs need to come together and partner, work more, do more things together, because at the end of the day, we're all focused, on one agenda. We're also very grateful for the Network of African Nations, Network of African Youths for Development members who've been following online. Thank you for your input and for coming through for this discussion. We hope to see you next time in our discussion in the month of in next month. So on behalf of NAID, I'm Julianet, the social media editor with NAID. Thank you very much. So
Thank you very much.
you're welcome.